So we're connecting again to the Srimad Bhagavatam after about a week. It's absent. So I was not 100% sure what verse we did last, but today I will read 14 and we will repeat 15. I think that seems to be apropos. It's Canto 1, chapter 8, verse 14 and 15. So 14 I'll read myself. Antashta sarvabhutanam atma yogeshvara harihi swamaya yavrino karvam vairajaha kurutave. The Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as the Paramatma. As such, just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy and has a very small purport, little purport. The Lord of Supreme Mysticism can simultaneously reside within everyone's heart or even within an atom by his Paramatma feature, his plenary portion. Therefore, from within the body of Uttara, he covered the embryo to save Maharaj Parikshit and protect the progeny of Maharaj Kuru, of whom King Pandu was also a descendant. Both the sons of Dhritarashtra and those of Pandu belonged to the same dynasty of Maharaj Kuru. Therefore, both of them were generally known as Kurus. But when there were differences between the two families, the sons of Dhritarashtra were known as Kurus, whereas the sons of Pandu were known as Pandavas. Since the sons and grandsons of Dhritarashtra were all killed in the battle of Kurukshetra, the last son of the dynasty is designated as the son of the Kurus. Yeah. Okay. So text 15, we'll do this collectively. Yajyapi ashram brahma shiras. Swamogam cha pratikriyam. Vaishnavam teja ashadya. Samasham shadbrigudvaha. Yajastram brahma shiras. Tvamogam cha pratikriyam. Vaishnavam teja ashadya. Samasham shadbrigudvaha. Yajapyastram brahma shiras. Tvamogam cha pratikriyam. Vaishnavam teja ashadya. Samasham shadbrigudvaha. Someone else, please. Foiled when confronted by the strength of Vishnu Lord Krishna. Please repeat. O Shaunaka, although the supreme Brahmastra weapon released by Ashvatthama was irresistibly and without check or counteraction, it was neutralized and foiled when confronted by the strength of Vishnu, Lord Krishna. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Brahma Jyoti, or the glowing transcendental effulgence, is resting on Lord Shri Krishna. In other words, the glowing effulgence known as Brahma Tejas is nothing but the rays of the Lord, just as the sun rays are rays of the sun disk. So this Brahma weapon also, although materially irresistible, could not surpass the supreme strength of the Lord. The weapon called Brahmastra, released by Ashvatthama, was neutralized and foiled by Lord Krishna by his own energy. That is to say, he did not wait for any other's help because he is absolute. We'll read the verse again. Yajyapi astram brahma shiras tvayamogam cha pratikriyam vaishnavam teja sadya samasham yat vrigu vaha. O Shaunaka, although the supreme Brahmastra weapon released by Ashvatthama was irresistible and without check or counteraction, it was neutralized and foiled. And we can learn so much from these different episodes, and not only you can say the narrative as a whole, but also the narrative in part, Because one of the interesting things I noticed when I was reading this chapter several times is that there's many different points of view, different speakers. Like here, it begins with, oh, Shaunaka, although the word Shaunaka is not mentioned in a particular verse, but it's mentioned because its sutta is speaking to Shaunaka Rishi. So why is it that this is mentioned again? It gets to give emphasis to this particular verse because there have been so many speakers. Like, let's say the background speaker is Vyas, if you want. The background speaker is Vyas. Just recently, we heard a very acute speech by Uttara, giving prayers to Krishna that her child should be spared in the womb. Then here, Shaunaka, and then, most important, of course, the main, you could say, subject of this particular chapter is prayers by Queen Kunti. So we have very important voices here to give slightly different perspectives. And why is that? Why do we need different perspective on different topics? Anybody can answer in one sentence, not a paragraph. Very good. Very good. Linda was saying that we're very limited, so by also considering other points of view, we can get a broader perspective. So this is one of the things that I was going to mention as a footnote only, but they say that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Very important thesis. Because generally the parts are analyzed and you get a certain perspective. And often we get the wrong perspective because we're analyzing parts, not the whole. The whole itself gives a different thesis. It's very interesting. So just like I'm going to say, you can say religion or spiritual teachings or the absolute are very different because they're from a different, not only from a different perspective, but what is studied. Look at the scientists. Some are physicists, some are biologists, some are, expert in all kinds of in chemistry, etc. There's only 3 divisions, and there's countless divisions. And in physics, like how many divisions are there? It's incredible. I attended a few conferences of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. In one particularly in Calcutta. Are you from Bengal? Yeah, there you go. I attended the Calcutta conference in 1997. It was incredible. One of the most incredible conferences ever assembled on the planet. And a conference between science and religion, and arranged by Dr. Singh. What's his name? Yeah, Swarup Damodar. Dr. Singh. Yeah, Swarup Damodar. So it's absolutely astonishing. I've been to many of his conferences. I used to live in San Francisco area. So we would have meetings every month at the Bhaktivedanta Institute and professors from the local universities. And it'd be very incredible discussions. And I remember one time there was a professor from Oregon that I knew, from Eugene, and he was promoting something a bit theistic, and he was virtually ripped off the stage. They virtually ripped his microphone away because they couldn't tolerate what he was saying, because they wanted no emotion, especially the professors, but they wanted just intellectual discussion. So Bhaktivedanta Institute, of course, reciprocated very much, otherwise nobody would come to a conference. I think that conference in Calcutta had like 200 professors from around the world. And I worked for the Bhaktivedanta Institute for many years when they were in Berkeley. And actually I was one of their photographers for the conference. And of course I met everybody, chatted with everybody. Because one of the things the professors were most interested in, when they would come to our meetings, guess what it was? Just guess. How about the big tables filled with prasad? I couldn't believe it. There would be so much food stuff. And that's there, they would all, first they come in the door, they take prasad. And I would, talk with them, joke with them a little bit, laugh, welcome them. And then, of course, they give, serious speeches, beautiful interaction. But the point is that to study things only partially will never give you a complete answer. So this is also one of the reasons, and I mention this every time I give a talk, that when I do give a class on a verse, I make sure I read the entire chapter. I don't just take the verse and start holding forth, but try and understand what is the weight of this particular verse in this particular context. So one of the things that I was meditating on is, when you have ordinary logic, you look at things you can see in the black and white certain way. So if you look at this verse, the first sentence, but you don't look at the word jagyapi, even though, forget about even though, it says that the Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwatthama is irresistible and without check. That is the thesis. It is irresistible and without check. But in this sentence, it's you can say it's removed to a questionable position by saying yagyapi, even though it is considered to be, we would say considered in inverted commas. You see, it's considered to be irresistible and without check. It was checked, confronted by Vishnu himself. And this is the thing. And then the remark is addressed to, O glory of the family of Bhrigu, which is Shanaka Rishi. So it's very, very interesting to look very closely at these verses and try and understand how it is to be understood. It's not always easy. You cannot really shallowly read and say, yeah, I know this. Just like the prayers of Queen Kunti are very famous, Prabhupada arranged for a small book to be printed with his commentaries. Now, does anybody know, without looking it up on your device, how many verses there are that Kunti actually uttered in prayers of Queen Kunti? Guess how many? Don't say 108. Okay, it's very few, 25. 25, yeah. So it's not so many. It's quite, it can be read in a couple of minutes, obviously. But the import of it is so tremendous, and Prabhupada has, of course, given so many commentaries and invoked it so many times. And the most iconic of these verses is 25, where she said, let these calamities happen again and again. What is it called? Yeah, that's one. Can you speak loudly? Yeah, Vipadishantu Maha. Exactly. So it says, Vipad means that which is very abominable, but let this happen again and again. Now, why would she say that? Yatra, tatra, let this happen again and again. Because he says, by difficulties, we can turn the light around and know what is the absolute truth. And just further remark in one of Prabhupada's purports, he says, difficulties or calamities, he says, they are artificial, they're not real. They're like a mental speculation. So if that is true about difficulties, which is so difficult to take, like all of a sudden you get sick or you get run over by a car, it's hard to say, oh, well, that's not real. What to speak of pleasurable things. You see, Prabhupada doesn't talk about it, but if difficulties are unreal, then what to speak of things that are pleasurable, and it's the pleasurable things that attract us and that keep us here. So pleasurable, beautiful weather, you go to the beach, everything is perfect. But something happens, and then you begin to introspect. You think, what is this? What is life all about? What is this all about? You begin to introspect because it forces you to take a viewpoint which is contrary to what is happening, because what is happening is unbearable. There has to be something bearable, otherwise you have to commit suicide. So all of this is in the prayers of Queen Kunti. Let it happen again and again, because if this happens, we learn to see you. And then Prabhupada discusses two types of Maya. It is, of course, very common. And this is Maya, of course, with a long A in the first vowel. The word Maya is also different Sanskrit, but it has a completely different meaning. Maya means something that is, but Maya is a condition or a pervading, you can say, situation. So Prabhupada points out the Mahamaya and Yoga Maya. And that is the most essential things for us to understand. What is Mahamaya and what is Yoga Maya? And they're both bewildering. Why are they both bewildering? Anyone? Yeah, they're meant to be bewildering, because one of them, it keeps you in the material world till you are eager enough to wake up, till you deserve, or somehow or other you get the mercy to wake up to a higher reality. And then there's actually kind of a type of reality, which is, you can say, Vaikuntha reality, which is not so bewildering. But then there's Rajadhaman, Maya. Maya, Krishna's pattern of Leela, where you can interact with God in a personal way. But God is not God per se, especially the way we understand God, as a and that's an English word. Does anybody know, I've mentioned it many times, but anybody know the etymology of the word God? Those of you who sat here many times, they know it. Like Leela Nanda, he knows. God comes from Od, comes from Ota. Hota. Comes from Hota. What does Hota mean? Sacrifice. Comes from Hota. So Hota and God are related. If you study a little bit of in linguistics, you can see how different letters turn into different sounds that are related, So it's very, very, very interesting. It's like the joke I often make. There's no F word in Sanskrit. There's no F. There's Pa. But because Pa, aspirated Pa, is difficult to say, the F is much easier to say F. Why do you think people use this word? Because it flies off. It's very easy to say. But Pa is difficult. Patram, Pushpam, Palam. Toyam, what do you say in Hindi instead of Palam? Well, Phalam, Phal. Yeah, see what I mean? You eliminate some of the syllables. You don't want to say Pa, it takes a little intelligence to say it, you see. So Phal. So all of these things are there. So that Yoga Maya is so beautiful, because that is the end goal of Krishna consciousness, is for us to be elevated to Vrindavan Dham and enjoy pastimes with Krishna in 5 different manners. See, from very neutral Shanta to extremely intimacy, Madhurya. So it's very, very interesting. So all these kahanis, these narratives are here to help us on the path. And this is why we study it carefully. This is why we study it every day. And this is why we try to understand what is the difficulty to understand this. Like how many people, how many devotees even will like to re-utter that phrase by Kunti, let these difficulties come again and again. How many pray for this? Very few. As a matter of fact, most people that run to the temple, like even this morning, there's quite a few cars on the parking lot. People come, they run in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 10 minutes, you see. And why do they come? Most of the people come for punya. They say, it's very good for me. Oh, people say, I said, what brought you here today? Many people say, oh, it's my birthday. Or people say, oh, my mother died, I have to get a blessing. Or they say, I feel depressed. There's so many answers. So, and then I sometimes repeat what Prabhupada says. They say, because most people say, I came to see Krishna. I say, but you can't see Krishna. And they look their eyes wide and open. And then they look something within 1 second, of course, I say, Krishna sees you. And it becomes so happy. And Prabhupada said that, I mentioned it many times. So when we think we see the deity, we do, of course, but on what level do we see? Mahaprabhu, he sees on the level of Radharani. When he sees Krishna, when he or she in the mood of Radha sees Krishna, he falls unconscious. That is the point. We don't fall unconscious. So it's very interesting to try and understand all these different modality and see through the eye of scripture. So what I was thinking of today is a verse it's from one of the Upanishads, I can't remember which one, but it's very famous. And it's quoted a lot, especially in the yoga industry, but it's called the Pavamana. It says, lead me from darkness to light. I forget how it goes exactly. Lead me from... Yeah, that's what it is. That it is. Say it slowly so everybody can hear you. Say it slowly. Ek baar aur. Asatma gamaya. Exactly. Jyotir gamaya. So it says, asat, which is darkness, ma, gamaya. Let me not go to darkness, but let me go to Jyotir gamaya. It's very famous in the yoga industry. This is repeated so much. Of course, in how they spell it, it's so funny. They don't realize that ma means not. So the way it is written is quite hilarious. So lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from darkness to light. And this is exactly what our intention is when we study these scriptures. Like, why are we reading all of these very detailed conversations? So what is the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam as opposed to the Vedas or the Upanishads? What is the purpose? The Puranas. Speak up. Yeah, but why can we relate? Because it's very simple. These are stories. We're all interested in story. Then what happened? Then what happened? Then what happened? So we were looking for, there's a story, there's a setting, and then there's characters to describe, and then without difficulty, there is no story. You understand that? The story is, there is a difficulty, and when the difficulty is solved, it's the end of the story. What does it say in English? They lived happily ever after. And then they lived happily ever after. So, and usually, like, if you're analyzing a novel, you can see without 10 or 20 pages at the end, it stops, and then they give you a few more words, and that's it, because then who cares? Husband and wife are together. I was meditating on that phrase today. They are one, like Radha and Krishna, they are one. But actually, grammatically, they are one doesn't make any sense, because they is plural, and one is singular. You see what I mean? So they are one. Or one of the gurus from the 60s used to say, not two. Not two. I always like that expression. He says, not two. And people would say, not two, one, three. No, not three. Three is a crowd, not one. But two as jugal. So this is the secret jugal. So it means an intimate connection. So then I was meditating on that just before I ran out of the door. I made another quick note on seeing the world in an objective way, or seeing everything as an object. This is one thing. But what happens when you see things as an object? What happens? You see an object, like I see you. What does it take for me to see you? A certain distance. You see, there has to be a certain distance. So like science is, we can call objective. Science is not subjective. If it was subjective, then it wouldn't be called science. We would call it metaphysics, you see. But subjective is a very different thing. Subjective means I'm sharing my realizations. You know, we're subject sitting on the same seat. In one branch of Shaivism, they say the guru and the disciples sit on the same seat. Otherwise, they cannot share knowledge. They share. They ask questions. They have a counter question. They have the Purva Paksha. How can that be? How can you say Krishna's God? Explain to me. Or Shiva's God. I can't believe it. And the guru explains it, you know, speaks, you know, like the mantra, speaks in the ear, very close, very confidential. And that's another point, that all of these teachings are confidential. So what do you think that means? It says right at the end of the Gita, it's Rahasya. What does it mean? I mean, we print 10 billion Gitas, cannot be confidential in that sense. But it means there is an esoteric meaning to all these scriptures that we may miss. When we think, oh yeah, I know the story. Yeah, when we started verse 17 till, 43. You know, and we think, we know all the facts, and we know the figures, and we can write an essay or a thesis on it. But do we understand it? It's like, when I was reviewing a little bit all these scholars at that conference in 1997, like how many of them were theists? How about virtually none? And there was one very famous who was there, Roger Penrose. I'm sure you've heard of physicist Roger Penrose. So he won so many, nominations, just over the top, Roger Penrose. So but he was a bit controversial because people thought he might be a theist, a bit of a theist. So he would make statements like this. He would say, from a Christian point of view, their view makes sense. He would say that, but he would never say, hey, I'm a Christian too, and actually I subscribe to it. So he had to be very careful. If he was not careful, he would lose his status. Can you see that? Or Dr. Singh had many meetings with him, quite a few meetings, very interesting meeting with Penrose. And if you read their conversation, it's absolutely brilliant. See, this is the brilliancy that Prabhupada at least had one disciple, Radharani, who was educated, had a PhD in science, and who could promote this science, the scientific side of Krishna consciousness. He was the only one, and he appeared just in the end. And it was only in 1977 that it became, I think it was the first type of group gathering, but Prabhupada pushed it just before he left the planet. And Bhakti Swarup Damodar, he did all of this labor. It's amazing. I went myself to, where is he from? What is the place that he's from? Manipur. Yeah, I went to visit Manipur once or twice. I had to get special papers to go there. It's quite an interesting place. You go on the bus and this big guys with, rifles, it's kind of a dangerous place. But the temple there, incredible. And the devotees, I must say, I found those devotees from Manipur the most humble I've ever seen. I remember one time, they served the prasadam, on the leaves, of course. There's hundreds of people sitting. In summer or other, Guru Dev had not come. And people sat there for more than 20 minutes looking at the prasad, not eating it until the persons in charge came. I've never seen it. Most people say, oh, Kyatuwa. There's no such thing as time in the spiritual sky. No, they waited. Very impressive people and how they treated each other. very impressive. So we can learn from everyone. And oh yeah, and Bhakti Swarup Damodar, when we lived in California, I remember one time, we went to the forest where you have the big trees. What are those big trees that grow in California? What is it? Oh, yeah, you call that's either Sequoia. Anyhow, he took about 100 small plants, put it in a suitcase, and was able to manage to take it to Manipur and planted it there. It's very beautiful. He was so he loved nature, very natural person. I have a few pictures with him. Sometimes when he would come and visit, he would stay at our house. At the time I was married, he would stay. And I have a picture where he was standing behind the apple tree near our porch, and he's touching the branches, like completely in touch with nature. Very beautiful person. Yeah, very humble. I worked with him for quite a few years at the Bhaktivedanta Institute and with his people, you know. And one of the things I did for one of the conferences, all the papers that came, I reduced them to, what do you call them? Small segments. What is it? No. I would write an abstract. I wrote so many abstracts. So I would study there. So I became quite familiar, you know, with the different concepts. And I would write the abstract. And they saved all the abstracts, you know. So very, very fabulous. So the point is here that this Brahmastra cannot be opposed. It says, right? It cannot be opposed. And yet, Janjapi, it was opposed. And Krishna withdrew it. And this is so amazing. So we can see. And the amazing thing is, of course, that Krishna appeared in the human form. He looked like a human being. And that's the beauty about Krishna. This is, again, the Yoga Maya feature of Krishna. He looks like an ordinary person. He's smiling, like after Kunti says all the prayers and says, Krishna is smiling. You see? He's smiling. Oh, very nice. Yeah, I was listening. Very good. So Krishna acts like a human being, but he is like the word here, Vaishnavam, Teja, Asadya. So Asadya, being confronted with, and Sama, Shamya. Sama, what does Sama mean? What is it? Yes, it's pushed together. Sama, like same. It's neutralized. I'm making it the same as everything around me. I think I remember a quote by Prabhupada saying, the air is everywhere, but it's not an object per se, because it doesn't have a form. Can you see it? But a human being like you sitting in front of me, so beautiful. What is your good name? Anisha? Anju, okay, Anju. So Anju is sitting in front of me, and she is like an object or a subject, you see, because she has a certain form. So Prabhupada points out in this purport and so that Krishna can have a form as he is with 2 arms, or if you like 4 arms in Vaikuntha, or he can have no form and be available in every atom as the Paramatma. So these are very crucial points that we should be aware of. And when we're trying to become, when we're doing our sadhana and we're trying to go forward to a higher level from sadhana bhakti to raganuga bhakti, we have to very acutely study this philosophy and also use our intelligence to understand it. Like it's nice if you can articulate it. What is the problem? It's not necessary. Because even if you cannot articulate, you chant Hare Krishna on a high level, that is sufficient. But for most of us to utilize the intelligence and try and understand this philosophy is imperative, you see. Like for instance, just like I'm delineating the difference between an object and a subject, we may not think about that. We think, yeah, whatever. But an object is somewhat impersonal for analysis. A subject is personal for interaction. Can you see it? So these are very